Okay, well, I think we're going to get started. Welcome, everyone. I'm Juliet Bromer from the Erickson Institute in Chicago, and I want to thank you for joining today's Kickoff webinar for the Pre-K and Family Child Care Project. This rapid response research project is funded by Homegrown and the Foundation for Child Development and is focused on understanding how states and cities across the U.S. are implementing mixed delivery, publicly funded pre-K initiatives in family child care settings. A few housekeeping notes before we begin. We will have time at the end of the hour for Q&A. Please put your questions as we go in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you agree with another question that someone posts, please like it, which will let us know it's a priority, and we'll try to answer it in the Q&A. If you have comments or information you want to share with other participants, please use the chat. So to start, let's see who is here today. Please complete this short poll about your role. Okay, let's see who's here. Okay, so it looks like we have a great mix of people on the webinar today. We have lots of family child care professionals and those who work with family child care professionals. We have state, local, and federal policymakers, advocates, researchers, funders, and other people. And I will say that in our initial registration list, we had people signing up from 45 states and 3 countries outside the U.S. So clearly there is a lot of interest in this topic. Okay, thank you. Okay, so now, next slide, please. Now I want to introduce my co-investigators and the rest of our project team. For this project, we have assembled a research team across 3 institutions that represents broad and varied expertise in home-based childcare, pre-K, early care and education systems, and equity. With me at Erickson is Samantha Melvin. Ayoma Iruka joins us from the Equity Research Action Coalition at UNC's Frank Porter Graham Child Development Institute. And Rena Hallam joins us from the Delaware Institute for Excellence in Early Childhood at the University of Delaware. Not with us today is Jason Husted, also from the University of Delaware. And behind the scenes, we have an amazing team of staff across the 3 institutions who work on this project and helped make this webinar happen today. Next slide, please. In addition, I want to acknowledge, in addition to our funders, I want to acknowledge our thought partners at NEAR, who are offering very useful feedback along the way as we engage in this project. We have also been in conversation with many national stakeholders, including a conversation we recently had at the National Association for Family Child Care with Family Child Care Conference attendees about pre-K and family child care just last month. And lastly, but most important, this project will be guided by a family child care educator and family advisory board made up currently of 3 family child care educators, 2 of whom are with us here today. Keisha Ballard is a family child care teacher in Florida who has been offering VPK for 7 years. Adrian Briggs is a family child care teacher who has been offering Philadelphia pre-K for 8 years. And Annie Gonzalez is a family child care teacher in Maryland who recently started offering pre-K. We also have plans to bring family members onto this advisory group as well to make sure that we have a family perspective on this project. Keisha and Adrian are here with us today and will join us for the Q&A at the end of the webinar. Hi, Keisha and Adrian, thank you for joining us. Before I give additional background on our project, I'm going to turn it over to Alexandra Patterson from Homegrown, one of our funders, to help us kick off the project. Alexandra?
Thank you, Juliet. I'll say good afternoon because I'm on the East Coast, but good morning to those of you who might be still in the morning hour of the day. And thank you for joining us today. We're so pleased that so many of you have joined us for this conversation. My name is Alexandra Patterson, and I am the Director of Strategy and Policy for Homegrown, a funders collaborative dedicated to improving the quality of and access to home-based childcare. Homegrown has 16 member foundations, and our investment priorities are guided by core belief in the strength and assets of home-based providers and in the value that home-based providers offer in responding to the needs of families and communities. Over 7 million children from ages birth to 5 receive care in a home-based childcare setting. And data reveals that home-based providers are often the setting of choice for Black and Latin families seeking culturally, linguistically responsive care, for families with mixed citizenship status, families seeking care during non-traditional hours, families seeking care for children with special needs, and families seeking care in rural communities. Through its investments, Homegrown seeks to advance the goals of inclusion of home-based providers in ECE systems at all levels, from policy and decision-making to service delivery. We are pleased to co-fund this project along with the Foundation for Child Development. And this project builds on prior work funded by Homegrown to map the prevalence of pre-K delivered in home-based settings across the country. We believe that this convening is the beginning of a conversation with providers, as Juliet mentioned, pre-K administrators, and policymakers about the tools and resources necessary to implement high-quality pre-K and mixed delivery systems that equitably include home-based providers, and to document the communities where this work is already happening. At this time, I will turn the conversation back to Juliet.
Thank you, Alexandra. Next slide, please. And we are so excited to be partnering with you on this important work. So I'm going to share a little background about what we know and what we don't know, tell you a little bit about the goals for the project, and then we'll turn it over to my colleagues to share our core principles and our framework, and then tell you a little bit about our research activities, and then we'll have time at the end for Q&A. So what do we know about pre-K and family childcare? We know from the recent brief that Alexandra mentioned that came out from NEAR that many states and cities allow family childcare educators to deliver public pre-K in their homes. We also know that some states and cities allow this, but may not actually implement it. For those who do allow and implement this mixed delivery option, we do not know much about how pre-K is actually implemented in family childcare homes, nor do we know enough about the opportunities and the barriers for states, cities, providers, and families who are involved in offering and using pre-K in family childcare. Next slide, please. So let's turn to the goals of this current research project. This is a rapid response research project, meaning that we aim to gather and disseminate information as we go. We hope this 2-year project will lead to better understanding about the strategies and challenges and successes that cities and states face delivering pre-K in mixed delivery systems that include family childcare. We also hope to better understand the experiences of family childcare professionals who offer pre-K in order to inform policies that seek to expand and increase the inclusion of family childcare in pre-K systems. We also hope this project will help to counter the perception that high-quality pre-K education cannot happen in family childcare. High-quality care and education, including pre-K, is about the quality of adult-child interactions and environments, and this can occur in school buildings, community centers, and childcare homes. This project is premised on the belief that including family childcare in pre-K can pave the way for transformative change across our early care and education systems and can result in enhanced and more equitable outcomes for young children and their families. We also know that there is growing interest and momentum across states, cities, territories, and tribes around equitably including family child care in early childhood systems such as QRIS and Head Start. Many of the core principles and issues that we're going to talk about today and that arise around pre-K in family child care are similar to those being addressed across birth to 5 early childhood systems that are seeking to achieve equity for children, families, educators, and communities. And finally, we hope this project will help to facilitate and contribute to a broader national discussion about the value of mixed delivery systems. So, next slide. So now I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues, Yilma and Vina, to share our core principles and conceptual framework for the equitable inclusion of family child care in pre-K. These are guiding principles and concepts rather than solutions. I will come back after they present to share with you a little bit about our research plans and how we hope to inform action steps for the field. Turn it over to Ioma.
Thank you, Juliet. And again, thank you all for being here. Good morning, good afternoon, good day. So for the next few minutes, I will walk briefly through our principles. For us, it was critical that we create these principles to be clear among ourselves as partners, funders, and others, both internally and externally, the kind of lens that we're using to position this project focused on pre-K and family childcare. So now to begin to sort of walk ourselves through the 6 principles guiding our work. We know that high quality family childcare can deliver on the promise of early care education. It is often the preferred choice for many families, including those living in rural communities, families who work on-site at hours, families of color, and those from marginalized communities. Yet for too long, the structures, standards, processes, supports, and compensation systems, in early care education have assumed that high quality pre-K can only occur in school or center-based programs. And this has been to the detriment of home-based family childcare programs. Pre-K systems that include family childcare also have the potential to increase families' access to high-quality early care education that is located in families' own communities, that reflects their cultural values and linguistic preferences, and is connected to their broader needs for childcare, whether it's full day, full year, neighborhood care, etc. As pre-K systems expand with the goals of serving all 3 and 4-year-olds, it is critical and crucial that we design them in ways that welcome family childcare settings and honor their role in families' lives and children's developmental trajectories. Thus, authentic mixed delivery pre-K systems must recognize that high quality pre-K does occur in family childcare settings. Second, authentic mixed delivery pre-K systems value and learn from family childcare strengths. Research on the benefits of family childcare programs for children and families really lags behind the decades of research on school and center-based pre-K. Yet evidence from descriptives and other kinds of studies show us that family childcare strengths and assets come from so many things, from their small group, home-based natural setting, which affords individualized and personalized care and education for children alongside flexibility and responsiveness to families' needs. Third, considering the vast number of children and families served from isolated regions and tribal lands to urban and dense centers and everything in between, it is critical that we promote, and I would say arguably protect and preserve, family childcare programs as a visible and essential component of early care education. This lens, we hope, broadens access to pre-K for families living in marginalized communities, isolated communities, who arguably benefit the most from this program and setting. We know that forming lasting, secure attachments with children, but also families, especially those who have experienced or are experiencing still poverty, trauma, toxic stress, racism, is an essential part of an authentic mixed delivery system. And we know that family childcare provides that. Next slide, please. So moving to our 4th principle, right? Let's think about it. We can't fit a square peg into a circle, right? Because family childcare programs do not benefit from the same economies of scale as school districts and centers, they need additional and differentiated supports around managing the multiple funding streams and program requirements that delivering pre-K requires, This is particularly necessary for educators who face many additional barriers to qualification requirements and higher education degree attainment, access to quotient and PD, and funding because of structural inequities. Right? When we look at some of our national data, we know that more than 50% of Black graduates, for example, own more on their education 5 years later than they did when they started. So it's important that getting higher credentials does not place one in an economic vulnerability situation. Therefore, authentic mixed delivery pre-K systems that include family childcare programs require the intentional differentiation of resources, standards, and compensation structures that support family childcare programs for their strengths and assets in serving children and families. This means that the design and the implementation of pre-K systems that includes family childcare must consider one, equitable funding and compensation, including both wages and benefits, accessible qualifications and professional development, family childcare specific pre-K program quality standards, comprehensive services for children and families that build on family childcare educators' authentic community and family connections, and streamlined data and monitoring requirements. So it has to be really specific to the family childcare setting. Going to the fifth principle, we all know already that children thrive under continuity. We know that children's development occurs over time and within a complex constellation of home, school, and community experiences. Children grow up in family childcare, and the multi-age setting allows families to stay with the same program from birth all the way through kindergarten, thus increasing the stability and continuity of care. Pre-K systems that take a developmental lens like this, rather than an age-based view of care, have the potential to support the stability, continuity, and connection that early education programs, including family childcare, offer families and communities. The inclusion of family child and pre-K has the potential to simultaneously strengthen the reach and responsiveness of pre-K programs, as well as stabilize the broader birth to 5 early child system that we know is really under a weight of sort of dismantling at this point in time because of COVID-19 and so many other things. Thus, this fifth principle is that authentic mixed delivery pre-K systems should not displace the continuity of care and the important care that family child care programs offer families. And the final principle, and not the least of which is important, but the final, and I will argue the most important, is that we continue to recognize the racism and sexism that exists when talking about family child care. Family child care educators are primarily women, including many Black, Latina, and other women of color. And they're likely to serve also racially, culturally, and linguistically and academically diverse children and families. Family child care educators of color face intersecting and compounding historical and contemporary inequities due to their race, gender, and other intersectional identities. And these sort of identities have also depressed their pay and economic stability. We already know that jobs in which women are predominate, whether it's like early care education, but also nurses, aid, housekeepers. These jobs are often viewed as invisible and not worthy of pay or protection. So that means that authentic mixed delivery pre-K systems must make equity and justice a top priority for family childcare educators who face inequities largely due again to their race and gender. As I heard and said recently, we can't continue to be color evasive. We must enter equity and justice in this work. So in summary, I would say that our principles are really about high quality can and does happen in family childcare. Family childcare programs have unique strengths and talents that need to be elevated and integrated into pre-K systems. More importantly, we need to promote and arguably also protect and preserve family childcare programs as critical components of a robust early care education system. We need to ensure that family childcare programs are integrated authentically into pre-K. We differentiate by resources, standards, and compensation in an equitable and fair way. And it's critical that we maintain high quality and nurturing continuity of care for children and families that family childcare programs already provide, because this will ensure we have the expanded and robust mixed delivery system that we so seek in pre-K and beyond. And finally, we cannot be color evasive. We need to center racial, gender, economic equity, and justice for our family childcare educators. They deserve better than what we have given. So with that and sort of the overview of the principles, I'm going to now pass on to my colleague, Rena, to talk about our framework.
Thank you, Yoma, and thanks to everyone for being here. It's great to see such a big crowd here to talk about this really important topic of integrating family childcare into mixed delivery pre-K systems. Before I talk, I'm going to show you, this is the whole framework you see on the slide. I want to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk about each of the components. But before I do that, I just want to share that we're still iterating on this. So this should be considered draft. We look forward to your comments and thoughts and the conversation after this. And we're going to have some additional listening sessions, which Juliet will talk about. But we intend to improve on this as we learn more from you and in dialogue with family child care educators about the best way to frame these issues. But here, as you see here on the current slide, is our current conceptual framework for the equitable integration of family child care and mixed delivery systems. And the first thing I want to point your attention to is the middle, right, the center. We center our conceptual framework on the strengths of family child care educators. So building on our guiding principles, which Yoma has just shared with us, we really want to start with the strengths and assets that family child care educators bring to the early care and education system and therefore bring to the pre-K system. And we'll talk a little bit more about those. But if we think about that first and the strengths of this particular sector, and then think about all of the policy and implementation issues around that, we come to more equitable processes and procedures and supports for family child care. So in the middle is the strengths, and then you see around this circle around the strengths is supportive and educator-led infrastructure. So again, I'll talk a little bit more about that. But this idea that we feel that family child care educators need a responsive, supportive infrastructure to help them interact with, notice the bidirectional arrows there, interact with these different component areas of implementation. We've then identified 5 component areas that we think should be considered when you're designing a system and thinking about how to do this in an appropriate and an effective way. And then all of this picture here, we can't think about pre-K without thinking about the broader system. And as Juliet shared, many of the issues that we're talking about do relate and connect to these other systems like quality rating and improvement systems and early Head Start and Head Start programs. So pre-K, thinking about family child care and pre-K in the context of the birth to 5 system, the broader birth to 5 system, and also acknowledging, as Yoma shared, that at times that birth to 5 system has also not been responsive to the family child care sector. And so there may need to be some adjustments there. And then all of that, of course, within the broader sociocultural context and legacy of structural racism, classism, and sexism, and thinking about how that has impacted our legacy systems and how we can be aware of that and do better as we go forward. So first, now what I'm going to do is talk about each piece of this and give you our sense of how we're defining it and operationalizing it. You'll notice that although there are different components, there are linkages and integration and issues of alignment. We can talk about that again at the end, but we'll start with the middle, start with pre-K and family child care. Change the slide. Thank you. So what strengths and assets do family child care have that they bring to the pre-K system? Ioma has already identified several of those, but specifically community development. We know from research that family child care educators are deeply embedded in their community, in their neighborhoods, and that they have strong relationships with neighbors and community agencies. And we feel that those types of informal relationships and leveraging those types of informal relationships can actually strengthen the delivery of pre-K implementation and pre-K services to young children and families. The notion of continuity and stability, the importance, we know the developmental importance of those long, continuous, stable relationships and promoting children's outcomes. By nature of the design of the home-based setting, family child care provides that and provides that stability that sometimes is harder to find in other sectors. So we want to honor that and ensure that pre-K policies, build on that in delivering high quality services. The third strength in particular that we've identified is cultural linguistic responsiveness. Family child care educators are often from the same cultural and linguistic background of the children and families they serve, and therefore are well positioned to provide culturally and linguistically responsive care, including the transference of cultural knowledge and support for positive identity development, which is so important for positive child outcomes, particularly for young children of color. Flexibility and family support. Many research studies have documented strong relationships between families and family child care professionals, and those partnerships they oftentimes family child care educators kind of go above and beyond in providing those services to families. It also may be, it's also possible in many family child care settings that there's more flexibility. So sometimes, you can open in half an hour earlier or later. We see non-traditional hour care often provided in the family child care setting. So we believe that flexibility and family support is a very important strength of the family child care setting that they bring to the delivery of pre-K. And then finally, this notion of individualization, which is these small stable groups in the home-based setting, it really affords the opportunity for more one-on-one support and individualized tailored instruction and support in response to the needs of young children. So we center these strengths because we want to keep those in mind, if you will. Keep those in mind as we think about all of the other policy issues so that we build on those and not interrupt those as we think about systems design. So now we're going to go to each of those pieces, each of those component areas of the model, and we'll start with equitable funding and compensation. So when we're thinking about funding and compensation, we're talking about a lot of different issues here. We know just in the broader field of early care and education, funding and compensation is a focal issue. So here it's front and center also. So thinking about wages for family child care educators, parity for family child care educators, salary parity with other professionals in the early childhood sector. Thinking about how do you conceptualize a benefit structure for family child care educators, they're small business owners, so how can they leverage benefits to support their own educator well-being? And also another feature of family child care, we know that family child care educators often work very long hours. If you look at some of the data, more than full-time, and often have multiple roles, right? Teacher and administrators. Well, how do those long hours and multiple roles, how do those factor into the funding and compensation of a family child care educator who is engaging in the pre-K system? Additionally, when we're thinking about funding and compensation, considering how can funding be delivered in ways that continue to support the, mixed age environment, the full day year-round care. So in order for that to happen, we need to conceptualize the delivery of pre-K funding in relationship to other systems, in particular child care subsidy, but maybe there are potentially other funding sources to be considered. So how can the state or the city, the municipality, whoever's designing the pre-K system, think about taking some of the burden about blending and braiding funding and supporting family child care educators to access that in a way that still allows them to provide that mixed age, full day, year-round experience. So the second kind of component area here is accessible qualifications and professional development. Thank you, Marina. So here, there's really kind of two issues here. One is we're not identifying a particular qualification, but what we're suggesting is that as we think about qualifications and professional development, that we build pathways that are clear and accessible for family child care educators. That means that they need to be programmed. A family child care educator who works full time can access, whether it's online, evenings, weekends, thinking about how they're going to engage and participate in those programs. Also, that they're stackable, portable, so they're going somewhere. They actually help them access the qualification, and that those professional development programs are well funded. Speaking to a Yoma's comment around debt and things like that. So thinking about clear, accessible pathways for family child care educators to meet the qualifications. I think the other piece of that is that we also need to consider the content of that professional development. So I know in my kind of practice-based work here in Delaware, I hear a lot from family child care providers about professional development and how it doesn't always meet the needs of family child care educators. So a lot of the professional development does use photos and videos and examples that are center-based settings. So I think we need to work with our higher education partners. We need to work with other professional development partners to ensure that the professional development includes the home-based setting as a legitimate space to deliver pre-K, deliver early care and education, and so that it supports family child care educators in generalizing and applying those skills to the home-based setting. So I was going to give you for each of these some implementation questions. So what might be an implementation question if I was a policy administrator and thinking about accessible qualifications in PD? So I might ask myself, how long is the phase-in time for family child care educators to attain qualifications? So clear, accessible, but also in a fashion that makes sense for a family child care educator. And are there alternative pathways, or do new programs need to be developed that are more tailored to the home-based setting? Okay, so now we'll go to the third component, which is family child care specific pre-K program standards. And again, linking to our guiding principles, we're not suggesting that we take pre-K standards and then apply them to family child care, but rather we start with the family child care program, move up, and differentiate those. So how might they be differentiated if you're building on the strengths of the family child care settings? So it's thinking about the staffing patterns, the day-to-day realities of family child care, but also honoring the assets and diversity of the children and families served. A really important piece under this pre-K program standards. Clearly, it connects to qualifications, what we just talked about when you think about what are reasonable qualifications, but also, by definition, licensed family child care, are they already intersecting with the Office of Child Care Licensing in their state? So how are pre-K program standards aligned or connected in some way for the family child care educator, so that there's a clear pathway to be able to meet standards and that standards aren't in conflict with each other? So an implementation for this particular area might be, how can pre-K ratios and group sizes align with child care licensing standards? How might we think about the home-based setting when we're thinking about group sizes and ratios? Another issue might be one of curriculum. I know one of the lessons I think that we've learned in the QRS world is it doesn't make sense to have more curriculum expectations for family child care than we do for center-based if they have to use 3 different curricula, for example. So really starting with the educator and then designing standards that make sense for high quality practice, but are tailored to the home-based setting. The fourth component is comprehensive services for children and families. And here we're talking about children who are receiving pre-K services in the home-based setting. How are they able to access the broad array of services and supports that children and families we may need? And here we're thinking there are kind of 2 issues here. One is, how can family child care educators who have these strong neighborhood and community relationships, how can those be leveraged to enhance the experience of children and families and to meet some of those needs? And at the same time, we know that there's often a need for building relationships with the more formal agencies in order to meet the health, mental health needs of families. Agencies like early intervention, early childhood special education, mental health consultants, and things like that. So under comprehensive services for children and families, we want to think about both building on the informal possibilities as well as leveraging and building formal relationships with these other agencies. And again, thinking about a family child care educator who's one person, maybe 2 people. How does the pre-K structure, how does the structure around them help them have these formal relationships with all these agencies? And so an implementation question might be, how do pre-K systems coordinate referrals for family child care educators? Rather than just kind of, maybe dumping the referrals, but how are referrals done? How are they tracked? What structure is there in place to connect family child care educators to that array of services that we often need when we're serving pre-K children? Okay, the last component is streamlined data and monitoring. So in all of our systems, we collect data and we monitor, and it's really important for us to do that to show that we're implementing effective practice. So here, what we're talking about is, again, thinking about all those multiple systems. So if family child care educators are they're already participating in licensing, if they're participating in pre-K, and then also maybe a quality rating and improvement system, how are we conceptualizing? How are they entering their data? Can there be a single portal, for example, to enter data to go to all of those systems? How is monitoring done? So I know in my work and working with family child care educators here in Delaware, there's a huge challenge for family child care educators as they navigate monitors, if you will, and helpers sometimes from different systems. So is there a way for the state or the city system to kind of take over some of that burden and coordinate that so that we don't have all of these different people going into the family child care setting looking at some similar things, so that we can reduce the burden, the number of people that go into the small, intimate, home-based setting, but also still get the data we need to be effective in our systems. So some of the implementation questions we might ask under this category are: how will pre-K data systems be coordinated with other systems such as CCDF child care subsidy, quality rating and improvement system, and early Head Start and Head Start? Another question: what are pre-K systems planned for cross-system training and coordination of monitoring? So again, getting at that cross-sector monitoring piece, and also ensuring that whoever's doing that monitoring is familiar with the setting or the context that they're going into, the home-based setting. So that gets kind of all of the pieces, and you can see there's connections. There's definitely connections between them, but we think there's some unique elements with each of them. And then as you go to that next circle, so this next circle, which is the supportive and educator-led infrastructure. So here we think is the glue, right? The bridge. So family child care educators, this very small home-based setting, how does it connect with all of these components and these implementation pieces? So what we're proposing here in this conceptual framework is that there is some type of infrastructure. So what exactly that is, we think can vary. We hope to get some really, as we look at other states and cities, we hope to get some good examples of this, but we think it can be things like networks, hubs, a family child care association, maybe an early childhood agency that has a dedicated home-based team. So some type of infrastructure that supports the family child care educator or a group of family child care educators, and very importantly, elevates their voice so that the group is in partnership with the family child care community, and that then creates this opportunity for this bi-directional conversation, right? Feedback loops about implementation. And so this, again, this local infrastructure is really a linchpin to connecting all of these pieces. It helps family child care educators access those different components. It also helps those different component areas, if you're designing monitoring, for example, to understand the perspective of family child care educators. We think that there are a lot of different ways to do this, but I'll give you an example. So again, I'm here in Delaware, and in Delaware, we've been thinking a lot about this. And so we've just started a brand new project, and we are launching family child care networks statewide. We've never had family child care networks in Delaware, but we are launching them for the explicit purpose of supporting family child care educators who want to engage and develop partnerships with publicly sponsored programs. So for us, that's public pre-K. It's also early Head Start partnerships. Those are the same standards in our state. So the idea being is that we're going to have networks that allow family child care educators who are interested to come together in groups with, it's a staff network with an early childhood professional, another early childhood professional from another agency, and to work together to assess their needs, think about infrastructure and capacity. It also helps the state make investments in the network so that they can build that infrastructure. And so right now, what it's seeming like it's going to look like is something like a shared services model that's coordinated and linked around the pre-K standard. So again, I just give you that as an example of what that infrastructure could look like. So I've talked about all the pieces here. I look forward to more conversation with you about your thoughts and reactions to our conceptual framework and thinking about this equitable integration. And I turn it over to Juliet to talk about other parts of our project.
Thank you, Rena, and thank you, Ioma, for really grounding us and giving us a lot of detail. What you just heard will be available in a brief that we're going to disseminate later this summer. So I know some of you have been wondering where you can get this information. The framework, the principles, and the explanation of the framework will be in a brief that will be forthcoming. So before we get to our Q&A, and I see lots of great questions coming in, I want to give you a brief overview of how we plan to build on this framework to engage in a series of research activities over the next year and a half. And I just want to emphasize again that today what we've shared with you is sort of conceptual, right? We've got some principles that, as Ioma said, we needed as a team to do this work together and move forward, and then a framework to guide the questions we want to ask in this research project. but we don't have the answers yet. So I see a lot of great questions in the Q&A that are the same questions we're asking in this research project. So over the next year and a half, we're going to be conducting a series of 4 listening sessions with pre-K administrators from states and cities that currently are implementing or thinking about implementing publicly funded pre-K in family childcare settings. These 4 sessions will each address a different topic related to design and implementation. We will also be fielding a national survey of family childcare educators who currently offer pre-K across the U.S. in order to learn more about their experiences and perspectives. And finally, we'll be doing some in-depth interviews with selected pre-K family childcare initiatives to learn more deeply about implementation, as well as to learn about models and some of those infrastructure approaches that Rena was just talking about that offer that bridge between the family childcare home and the pre-K systems. All of these activities that we are going to be doing will result in a series of short research to policy briefs on implementation, strategies, models, and lessons learned from the field, which we will release about every 4 months through the end of the project. So rather than one big project at the end, we call this a rapid response research project, where we're going to be collecting information and putting out information as we learn it. And we're going to be learning it from all of you out there who are doing this. We don't have the answers. We are looking to you to learn some strategies and help to inform the field and inform each other. We'll also be developing a resource library of tools and documents for states and cities to use. Those will be documents that you all may be using and willing to share, and some tools maybe that we develop as we learn more. So check back at our website as we identify and develop those materials. And now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Sam, for our Q&A. Sam?
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for a lively and engaging chat and Q&A box. I'm going to try to get through as many of these questions as we possibly can. So thank you for upvoting those questions, but keep doing it so we know how to prioritize the questions that are most important to those of you that are here with us today. So just to kick us off, I'm going to invite our wonderful family child care educator advisors, Adrian and Keisha, to come onto video. Hi, Adrian, and hi, Keisha. As Juliet said earlier, these two have been doing pre-K in family child care for many years, and we really are looking to them to guide us in our questions in this research. So just to open it up, I'm going to ask them a question. And if you are a family child care educator in the call, please feel free to answer this question too in the chat. So Adrian, first, I'm going to ask you, what are the benefits and challenges of doing public pre-K and family child care that you want policymakers and others to know?
Hi, yes, the benefits that I'm looking at for the policymakers is the continuity of care. We offer small environments which allow for more individualized care for the children. We're educated educators with degrees. Also, we have a passion. We run high quality programs. We have the mixed age groups, and they're learning from one another as well as teaching one another. Additionally, it's generational relationships. I'm on my 3rd generation of children. So the generation of relationships, the children are being well prepared for kindergarten. And the challenges are the abundance of paperwork from each agency, and which could be a universal documents instead of everybody wanting different documents. The disruption of our day with so many different people coming in to monitor our programs. So they are the challenges. I'm going to pass it back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Adrian, and thank you for being here, especially while the kids are resting. And I'm going to pass it to Keisha. What do you want policymakers and everybody on this webinar to know about both the good and the bad of doing pre-K and family care?
Hi, everyone. I'm Keisha. I want everyone to know that we are family homes. which provides so much more than a center. We have a smaller setting. The children, we have one-on-one that we can involve ourselves with the children. They get that special care from us. We also, our setting is normal for them. It's nothing different. So the transitioning is easier for them to come in because it's a home. It's something that they're used to. It's normal. It's natural. We build trust with the child and the parents. They face so much, children as well as parents, they face so much in our today's world. And so we're flexible. We also, children today, they face, like I said, many challenges. They're children that have disabilities, and that is a huge factor in our today's world. We have parents that their child have gone to other places, but they came to a smaller setting, family home. I had that experience multiple times. And it was wonderful for the parent. That trust was gained. The child was able to learn from the other children, and they weren't just, categorized, So it's a whole new setting and better setting for children and using the family homes. One thing, and with that, we're building confidence with those children. Those children are learning, and they're learning and gaining confidence in themselves. They're taking on leadership roles and things like that. And as they grow, so they're growing with us. One of the things I really want everyone to know that the many hats that we wear too many. we are the drivers, we do transportation, we are the cook, we are the server. What else do we do? We're the director, we're the owners, a lot of paperwork. We are teaching the children as well, and as well as interacting with the parents. So it's a lot of hats that we wear. And I'm glad that you all are here to hear and us recognizing and bringing to you what we do.
Thank you so much, Keisha. And thank you, Adrienne. Again, we're so happy to have you both here. So if any of you have more questions for Adrienne and Keisha, you can try to drop them in the Q&A, and maybe Adrienne and Keisha can reply by typing in the Q&A or the chat. Because we only have a couple more minutes for questions. So I'm going to move on to see what's next. Our most liked question is from Cindy Cunningham. I hope I'm saying your name right. This question is really important, and I think near and dear to all of us on this call today. How will the voices of family child care providers be raised in the space where there are also center staff and educators involved in the effort? Family child care voices are often diminished by advocates and center educators. Could all of our panelists actually come back on screen, and whomever wants to go ahead and try to answer that question for what we envision, go ahead and come off mute.
Okay, I'll dive in. As family providers, educators, we have to know that our voices are very important. If we don't speak up, no one else will speak up for us. We cannot be intimidated by the centers or anyone else. What we provide out here is extremely important. And this pandemic has shown just how important and how essential family child care is. So we just have to keep this momentum going and let it be known how important we are. And we are up for the challenges. We just need the support and the guidance.
And I want to add to that, parents prefer, especially since this pandemic has happened, parents prefer having us, family homes, as a teacher for their children. They prefer having their children in a smaller environment and not so many interactions with other people or many people, like a center does, they have a high turnover. They always changing children around. We don't have a high turnover. We have our children basically till they go to school, kindergarten. So family home is greatly requested from parents.
And thank you both so much for answering that question. I'm going to move us to our next one. So there are a lot of questions about qualifications and compensation. That is definitely the most common topic here. So I would love to open this up to our panelists to give us a sense of what do you all think is necessary in order to make sure that family child care educators are seen and heard in their pre-service training and their in-service training, that they receive compensation that aligns with their efforts and that doesn't pass these costs on to parents? Maybe Ioma?
That's a great question. And first I want to thank both Keisha and Adrian for just their amazing, their guidance, expertise, advocacy, and the work they do. And to me, that's a big question, right? I mean, let's also remember that we're focused on family child care for many reasons, and we have to continue to push that forward. But we also have to recognize in the larger ecosystem that includes our child care, pre-K, but really our child care ecosystem that is both home-based and center-based, everybody is underpaid and stressed. So I think there's a larger issue that we have to recognize about the low compensation, but also the low value that's given to this sort of sector writ large. But I do think what we need to do, at least begin to address that, is that we have to be able to speak clearly as to the cost of quality care in family child care. Like, I think we have to say, look, you all have books. Like, here's how much it's costing, right? You're taking money both from my families, from our food on our table to all these things. We have to actually be able to really specify this is the cost. And the fact that you're not paying me, here's how much I'm subsidizing you, America, to go to work, go to the beach, go to Europe, wherever you're going. So I do think we have to be very clear about the cost. We often don't do that. And I do think, a lot of our family child care brain builders, I think a lot of times you're doing it out of the kindness of your heart. I think we need to stop saying that. I think that's number one, to address the whole compensation. Don't ever say, I'm doing out of the kindness of my heart. No, we already know that you are, because to be an educator of young minds, you already have a level of empathy, a level of love and care that you already exude. But I think that we have to be really specific about the cost of care, because when a doctor charges me and sends me a bill, they don't say, oh, let me give you a subsidy. No, they're like, here's the bill, go figure it out. And I think we need to treat a similar way of like, what is the true cost? And then we have to make sure that it's paid for, whether by federal, local, because we know families, particularly families who do use family child care, there's a cost, there's a threshold that they can't meet. And so we can't put that on them, but we can't put that on those who benefit from businesses to a whole lot of organizations. And a lot of people benefit off of the subsidized care you are providing.
Yes to all of that, and the chat is lighting up. So thank you, Ioma. All right, let's see if we have time to squeeze out one more question. So I think I'd like to bring it back to alignment, because there's a few things around that. So could you all, maybe Juliet or Rena, speak about a little bit more about aligning the requirements for pre-K with other systems, QRIS, licensing, subsidy, and also how we can elevate the importance of that alignment to the state legislators and policymakers that may say family child care can do it, but have not invested in making sure family child care can do it.
Should we start, Juliet? So that's also a very big question. I mean, first of all, and I'm also responding to some of the comments in the chat, I want to say that we're talking today about some of the unique issues around family child care educators in the home-based sector. We know that there are issues in the center-based sector as well, and across, as Ioma said, across all of the early care and education sector. We're just trying to elevate the specific unique features of family child care here today. But when you think about pre-K, you do have to think about all of those other sectors as well. And that's where the issue of alignment really comes in. I mean, if we sit down and think about all of these systems that we've developed, And whose burden is it to manage all those systems? I mean, like if I work in QRS, I do a QRS. This is my work. I work in pre-K. I do all these things in pre-K. But for a family child care educator, one person or maybe one person with an assistant to navigate all of those different systems, many of them have the same components: standards, funding, support, data, and monitoring. And so it's just I think if we take and listen to family child care educators and think of that perspective, and then how then do you look at the systems? And can we use this as an opportunity? It's actually a tool that will help a lot of different sectors, right? Using this perspective, think about how we stack those, align those, we'll actually be using our resources more effectively. For example, if we had one data portal, right, and that we can enter the information, but it doesn't seem reasonable to expect a family child care educator and to be able to navigate all of those different systems. And I can only imagine, Adrienne mentioned how many people coming into her home. I mean, that's a lot to ask, and we're trying to do this in a way that honors the uniqueness of that setting, right? That intimacy, that small group, that small stable group. And if we start sending in, 4 people in a week and having to navigate that, it disrupts that. So I think that's the key here is how can we see the strengths, lift up the strengths, protect the strengths as we think about integrating into systems. And I think that those systems alignment, I think that's our job, some of the policymakers' job to take on that burden rather than just pushing that burden down onto to family child care professionals.
Yeah. So I don't have much to add except that, we learned in another study we did on the decline of family child care that the number one reason people were leaving family child care work was because of all the burdens that they experienced from the systems. And so, I think something we haven't talked a lot about, but pre-K might be, it's not happening in a lot of places with family child care, but it might be a really promising strategy for building back a really thriving family child care workforce for those home-based child care providers who want to do this and are ready to do this. So I think, but it has to be done in a way that doesn't drive people out, that they keeps these incredible educators in our field. We need them. They are just such a valuable part of the early childhood ecosystem and have such incredible commitment and care, and we want to raise them up. So thank you. I see we have 1 minute left. So Marina, if you could just pull up our last slide, that would be great. After this webinar, we will send out the recording. And please be sure to complete our post-webinar survey to share your thoughts. We really are eager to hear from you. That really helps us move our work forward. As I said, the framework brief will be released later this summer, and you are on our list and we will send it to you. The first of our 4 listening sessions will be held in just a couple of weeks on July 26th. And it will be focused on qualifications and compensation for family child care. We are inviting pre-K administrators in states and cities that include family child care in pre-K. If this is you, please email us or sign up, take a screenshot of this QR code, and we will make sure to get you registered. We want to learn from you. This is the first of our listening sessions. These are going to be run like focus groups. Chance for you to share what you know with others and with us so that we can then push that information out. And I think that is it. I just want to thank everyone. Marina, can you put up the last slide with our contact info? I just want to thank everyone for sharing an hour of your day with us, and have a great rest of your afternoon. Thank you.